Hi, everyone. I am really excited today to be sitting down with Dr. Orestis Vasilakis. He is a doctor of physics, and we're going to talk about one of the areas he specializes in, and that is chronic pain. So, welcome, Orestis.
Thank you, Alyson. It's a pleasure to do this talk with you and having this interaction online, and sharing it with everyone. Yeah, and thanks for this introduction too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's interesting to me that you are a doctor of physics, but you're also a clinical hypnotherapist. So I watched you speak not long ago on how the two intersect. So do you want to just touch on that first of all?
Yeah, actually, it's something that really raises people's curiosity when they hear, oh, like you went from physics to hypnotherapy. Sometimes they even tell me, oh, these are like completely opposite. And like it's interesting because in some sense they look opposite, but if you look things from another point of view, they have similarities, right? And I think this tells us already a lot about how looking things from different points of view can
Yeah, I was
bring
just
things that
thinking
look
that.
completely opposite to things that have similarities. And yeah, that's something we do in hypnotherapy too, right? With clients. So yeah, I think for me, it's what I realized, okay, eventually, is that essentially in both cases we build stories. We work with stories, okay? Like in physics, we build stories that describe nature, and we create the concepts around that, right? We have the notions of particles, we have the notions of black holes, and the story sees how these things get created, how they interact. And of course, for this, we use mathematical tools. And in hypnotherapy, we essentially work with the stories our clients, the people who come for us for help, have built up in their lives, right? And help them see the stories, because that's the thing. We all create stories all the time.
I was going to say, yeah, I was going to say one could argue that our whole life is our own perception of events and story.
It is. And our stories can have areas uh, we don't realize, that are not obvious to us. And finding out about these areas can be similar to making a discovery, right? About a new law or a new particle or something in the universe. I don't say that these two are exactly the same, but as concepts, they are very, very similar as ideas.
Yeah, conceptually, yeah. So so often people, um, they have an experience with clinical hypnosis, which leads them to study it. Was that something that happened to you? Is that what led you into the study of hypnosis, or what was the point of origin for you?
Oh, actually, that's an interesting one. Because no, for me, getting into hypnosis was not the hypnotherapy part. I actually got into hypnosis for the fun part, which is interesting because I used to do a lot of activities that involved my body. Like I used to go dancing, I was doing martial arts, and a bunch of things that were giving me a lot of release. And at some point, I started getting a lot of orthopedic injuries in my life. And I also got diagnosed with chronic pain and then later fibromyalgia. So progressively, I reached a point that I could do less and less of these things.
Yeah.
And at some point, I was like, okay, like this body has had enough. I need to find different ways of interacting with the world. And that's how I started getting I mean, I was already interested, but that's how I started getting more interested on what makes a human experience, right? And how we interact, and how we can form experiences with other people, and where these experiences can go. Even in the terms of storytelling, since we returned back to the notion of stories as before.
Yeah.
And somehow it was the beginning of the pandemic, and many things were happening online. And some hypnosis things that were online fell into my in my socials, in front of my eye. And I was like, okay, yeah, that looks something like, that makes sense to me where I am now. And yeah, I went down that road, and I kept getting excited more and more and more from it. And eventually, yeah, I wanted to study it and learn it about as a therapy modality, and actually use it to help people.
Well, and it's turned into one of your specialties is chronic pain. And in fact, you have a free Facebook page, which a group which I'm a part of, and I really love listening to some of your ideologies. And one of them is the concept of warrior versus peacemaker. That makes a lot of sense to me. I want to get into that a little bit. Can you explain what that means to you?
Yeah, like it means, it also comes from a personal experience, because I've also been in this warrior mindset when my journey with chronic pain and chronic illness started. I didn't realize it. It was called like that back then, but when I heard the word, it kind of made sense to me, and I felt it was empowering back in the moment. So I totally understand how people want to embrace an identity around the fight they are giving, because it can feel it is a fight to try to find answers, to try to find what's going on with your body and try to get better. So I mean, then I had to go through several random aha moments, which for me happened randomly, okay, because I had no guidance. And eventually, what helped me in totality, well, if I bring all these aha moments together in one whole, is what I like to call the peacemaker mindset. And the peacemaker mindset is essentially that basically, I mean, warriors, right, win or lose battles, but peacemakers prosper. In a war, there are no winners. There are sides with less losses. And it's also kind of inspired from that. And so for me, it means that whatever it is going on, whatever it's happening, whatever we are dealing with, the best way to deal with it and take decisions in it is to be able to step in a place of calm and kind of momentarily distance ourselves from it and then re-engage. Because if we are constantly in a fighting mindset, then we are really causing more pain to our body and additional issues. So eventually it doesn't help us. We need to take the breaks.
When I'm listening to you describe this, it really reminds me of animals in the wild. So if you think about a tiger or lion, the efficiency with which they approach everything, they don't kill unless they're threatened or they need to eat. So there's a bit of, it's sort of an economy of effort. It's efficient.
Yes, it is about economy of effort, and it's about yeah, regulating, right? It's efficiency not only in the moment, but it's efficiency in a longer time scale, because there can be moments where I put a lot of effort, and there should be moments where yeah, I just take a rest and I look at things a bit from distance to have a more clear view. uh, so I want to clarify that, because having a peacemaker mindset doesn't mean I give up what I'm trying to do. It just means I engage with it in a different manner that preserves my energy, as you said, and allows me to better regulate myself and get where I want to get. I mean, the example I can give is recently I did a 800, almost 800 kilometer drive from Prague, somewhere in Germany. And yeah, it was hard, and I didn't believe I could do it because I was worried. What if I get a fibromyalgia flare up? What could possibly happen during the trip? And that's the thing. Like, then I took a moment and I was like, okay, what are all these fears? What are all these concerns? How shall I address them? And some of them I addressed practically. You know, they were simple things like, okay, have an extra bottle of water in the car, right?
Practical things, yeah.
Yeah, some of these were simple practical things, and some others were more emotional. They were more like, you know, what if I feel like I'm pushing myself to get to my destination? And then I realized, like, okay, like the point is to go there and have fun, so I will make the journey fun as well. So I will keep evaluating during the journey if it feels fun. And when it doesn't feel fun, I will make a stop somewhere near and do whatever I need to do. So I return to this fun place in my mind again. And then I did 800 kilometers without basically having a flare up afterwards. I mean, of course, I needed to rest, but you know, I was simply tired because it was 800 kilometers.
It's long. It's a long drive. I like the analogy of when babies learn to walk. They're not thinking, "Why aren't I running?" They're just thinking about putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. Basically, it's a similar thing. Yeah, it's a similar thing. I think it's an important aspect when we move along an effort and along a process, right? How we evaluate the signals as we get along the process. I mean, I was watching one of your videos recently, and you were talking about athletes, right? And
What was I talking about?
about athletes, how they try again and again
Oh,
every time, even if they
oh
miss
yeah,
that
yeah,
one, right? Yeah, that
yes,
one.
yeah,
And it made me think how this can relate to pain, for example.
yeah,
So if we've been in a very protective state where we interpret pain as something uh, very, very, very bad, I mean, it is a signal that has a meaning, right? It gives us our attention about something. But if we interpret it always in this, like, you know, then we will keep getting pain. But on the other hand, an athlete, probably they get little pain signals every step along the way. When they do a run and the next day they do another one, their muscles probably are still sore.
yeah.
But
They're
they
able to
understand,
regulate.
they're able to regulate what this signal is and what it means and evaluate it according to where they are in the moment. And I think that's important when we put ourselves in these long-term goals, essentially.
Yeah. So you touched on this before, but I know when you are someone living with chronic pain, I know it can really affect your mental and emotional health. And when you sort of have physical, mental, emotional breakdown all at once, it can be really difficult to you have a sense of overwhelm. So how do you advise clients who feel like I don't even know where to start?
Well, yeah, sometimes it can be really difficult when people experience this total overwhelm. So my advice in these cases is that, first of all, an important aspect is removing or resolving any of the unnecessary pain first. Because if we are able to resolve any of the unnecessary pain, then immediately part of all this load reduces, right? Because if you remove the pain, then the emotional load the pain brings reduces. So I try to say to people that dealing with this is your gateway to dealing with the rest, and that essentially we don't need to dig in all the underlying reasons that bring the emotional aspects in order to deal with pain, because these are two things that I see many people have connected with. One thing they have connected with is that if there is a physical issue, there should be pain, and pain cannot go away if there is a physical issue. I want people to know that pain can go away, even if there is a physical issue. And sometimes pain can be purely emotional. Physical pain can come from emotional reasons too. And the other thing I want people to know is that basically we don't need to dig in the deepest reasons of the emotions to deal with the pain. What is required from them is essentially to be open, honest, and have a sincere interest and desire to shift the way they think and the way they approach things. Of course, the journey to emotional regulation might be a bit longer, but if they make the decision that I will start regulating my emotions differently, then pain can go away, and this eventually can help them regulate their emotions differently.
It's interesting. It brings me to another subset of this when we talk about the emotional part of it, and that's secondary gain, which can exist in some clients in their chronic pain and the issues and resolving them. Did you want to touch on this a little bit? Have you had clients where you've had to sort of uncover a secondary gain? I know sometimes it can be hard for clients to accept that there is a secondary gain because they just want to get better, and they don't like the thought of maybe being sort of complicit in keeping the pain alive. So did you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I can touch on that. It's indeed a more delicate topic because it can really bring people in front of an internal conflict they haven't realized before. And then, of course, their initial motivation, right, is what matters. The degree of their initial motivation to be free of pain is an important parameter. So it's essentially because this touches to another point that's a bit more general with dealing with chronic pain, that when we say we're about dealing chronic pain through mindset, right, we don't actually perform a miracle cure. We really are asking people to make a transaction with their own mind. So the same way with any other method, let's say whether it's medication or whether it's a TENS unit, you are making a transaction. You say, I will have these sticky pads on myself and I will carry this device around and this will help ease my pain. It's a valid approach. In a similar way, medication, you make a transaction with yourself that I will be getting this medication and it has the side effects, but for me it's better because it reduces my pain. In a similar way, we are asking people to make a transaction with their mind when we help them resolve the pain through mindset. And the transaction they need to do depends on the person, and sometimes there is this secondary gain. And this can be, it's very individual. For some people, it can be something simple. And then they realize, when we help them see it from another perspective, they realize, oh, okay, yeah, like if I If I am to be free of pain, then I don't really need that. So sometimes reframing how we see the story, as we were saying in the beginning, right, can help people realize that the secondary gain is not really that important. And sometimes it's more difficult. Sometimes it's more difficult, and it can be a reason where people get reduced pain relief versus complete resolution, because their own mind has a reason to keep the pain because they will lose the secondary gain, and the secondary gain could be some support they are receiving or some care because they are in pain, or it may be that they have to change some big aspect of their life that relates to relationships, to work. So sometimes this is difficult, and I think that's why it's important to put a lot of material out, and that's what I do in the group. So people, when they come to us to help them with an issue, okay, they are prepared mentally and understand what this means. And I think that's the best we can do. We can help them reframe, we can give them material so they get an understanding of what this is, but basically it requires their effort. It doesn't work in vacuum. Their vacuum physics terms.
Yeah, I mean, you had touched on identity before, and often when people are experiencing chronic pain, it becomes part of it can become part of their identity. And we as humans are creatures of habit. We go back to what we know, we go back to what is comfortable for us, and as crazy as it may sound, sometimes the pain can be our comfort zone. It's what we know. It's the neural pathway we go back to. So it's important to have someone objective figure out, is there a reason you're holding on to this? If not, great. But if there is, we need to uncover that. We need to let go of that. So then you can create this new almost identity and, get back to homeostasis. Is that your experience with clients?
It is, and it's my personal experience too, right? And I think that's the difference between being in a warrior mindset and being in a peacemaker mindset. Is essentially a new identity that we are asking people to adopt. And people have to feel ready to adopt this identity. So the best thing I can say to people is, like, if once you get informed about this possibility, really ask yourself, take a moment and ask yourself, is this for me? And notice what your own intuition is telling you. Do you feel like it's a clear yes? Do you feel there is a yes, but there is something like something lurking in the background?
Yeah.
And I mean, you can visit an objective source like a hypnotherapist and analyze more what is this thing that's in the background. But it's important before you do that to be a bit honest with yourself, how this thing that may be lurking in the background, how big thing of a thing it is. Is it something you are willing to work with to let go, or is it something you prefer to keep? Because the truth is, if something you prefer to keep, well, then maybe you need to some more time before you approach the solutions.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's crucial to be ready to let it go in order to actually move forward with the pain maintenance.
Yeah, so that's the thing. And what people should realize also, together with that, because you talked about maintenance, right, is that basically what keeps the result and keeps them pain free, it's their own motivation to keep the new thinking approach about the pain and about the issue and about taking care of themselves. Because we are doing a mindset shift. We help them do a mindset shift. And if at any moment they want to switch back to the mindset effect, then the pain comes back, because it's really up to them. Basically, it can be like starting a medication, stopping the medication. Changing your mindset to something positive, changing it back to something negative.
Yeah.
It's not very different than that. And this brings me to another thing that basically people have a lot of times, because you did this live, right, about questions about hypnosis also, right? People often wonder if the effects of hypnosis are permanent. And my understanding, at least, of this is that what makes the effects long-lasting to the degree that can be permanent, because if it lasts the rest of your life, then it's permanent, right, is your motivation to keep the effects.
And the motivation for repetition. And that's really what you need.
Exactly. Basically, we set people, we give them some initial conditions. We set them on a track, right? And
Yeah.
it's up to them to keep going that track.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to keep going that track, then of course they can choose another track. It's their own freedom, their own free will, and their own agency.
Yes. I always tell people this, it's not about blame, it's about having culpability and agency. It's, it might not be your fault you're in this situation, chronic pain, but the fact that you do have agency in it is actually quite empowering. Nobody's blaming anyone for wanting to keep something, but you have agency, and that's a good thing. You do have more control in the matter than you may have realized.
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate thing, because also many people feel that sometimes they're being judged and they're being blamed by their environment about what they are going through. And this is like, not just feel, they really blame the judge often, because no one understands. They will call them lazy, they will call them that, they will call them that. But it's not true. They're really having an issue, and they are trying to get better. And if they're trying to get better, then they should think what other ways they can try to get better that bring them better outcomes.
Yeah.
So it's in their agency to decide the ways in which they try to get better, basically. And it's not their fault because of where they are. Because we all, I mean, even if some things are our own actions, and we carry, so there is a difference between something being our own fault and carrying responsibility about something. This is very different.
Yes.
We always carry responsibility for the things we do, but we may not be always 100% aware of what we did and what this will bring.
Yes.
So basically, if we don't know, it's not really our fault, and there's no point in blaming ourselves.
Yeah.
But it is our responsibility to recognize we didn't know, we did this thing, and what we can do now to make things better.
Well, that's why hypnosis, right? Because we work with what's below people's awareness. But you can't change what you're not aware of. So I agree, that's the first step. And I always say people are complex, but solutions don't have to be. Hypnosis doesn't have to feel overwhelming. It's actually quite a natural, enjoyable process when you have someone working with you.
Yeah, it can be an enjoyable process. It also depends a lot how you feel with the person you are working, because that's a very important aspect. If you feel comfortable and nice with the person you are working with, then you will be more open and more accepting to change. So it's important to, whatever people choose to go, to come with this approach and find the person that makes them feel this approach.
Yeah, because it is a synergistic thing. It's a partnership almost. The hypnotherapist is a guide, but when you come with that open mind and that willingness and readiness for change, it's a match made in heaven. It is one of the most powerful methods for change. And I know for chronic pain, Well, I know I don't have chronic pain, but we've all had injury. And I know that that method of the dissociation has worked for me many times with pain.
Yeah, dissociation works. I want to specify here because sometimes people hear dissociation and they get a
Yeah.
bit cautious, right?
Yes.
What we mean a healthy dissociation. We mean the same type of dissociation that when you are in the playground or doing anything you enjoy in your garden or
Yes.
running or swimming, you don't think of something else. That's the
Right.
dissociation we are talking about. When you are into something versus something else, you are dissociated from the something else.
That's exactly right.
Exactly. And this really helps. Sorry.
Well, and we should also mention too that before we work with chronic pain or any type of pain, we do recommend you get seen by your doctor first to make sure that it is something that you don't have to have medication for, something like that.
Oh yeah, you mean the evaluation criteria?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important for people to listen to what their doctors say and have a diagnosis, because or at least an issue exclusion, basically.
Absolutely.
So it can be an ongoing issue, but they have to know what it is and that they are being followed on it, because then this also, it's both a safety aspect, right, that we know what we are dealing with,
Yeah.
what pain we are removing, and it's also an aspect that actually acts as a vantage point to help them be free of pain, that you know what it is, you know how to
Yes.
take care of it, and basically you don't need to to be in pain about it. Yeah, that's an important aspect. But
Yeah.
also people can have ongoing issues, and they can have just the degree of pain that reminds them they have this issue, so they take care of it, which can be much less than what they are experiencing
Yes,
at the
exactly.
moment. And remove, because that goes to the other important point, why it's safe, that removing basically pain that's not necessary, or resolving it. I like using the word we're resolving it. It's kind of like the pain that's not necessary. We're not just removing it, we're resolving it. Doesn't basically still allows them to feel pain that will be useful in the future, because often we are thinking of pain treatment in terms of analgesia or anesthesia that completely removes pain from the area.
Yeah.
But it's not like that. It's more like dealing with pain we already know where it comes from and what it is, and then having still the ability when we need to be informed about something else in our body to get new pain, because in the end, we need the signal. It tells us something.
That's right. Pain is an indicator, right? Pain's an indicator, so you got to get underneath it, figure out what it is. But if it's something that you have to live with, something that's chronic, or something that the doctor has said doesn't require anything else, then working with your mind over matter, is really, really effective.
Yeah. Basically, essentially, if you are being given medication for chronic pain, I don't talk about medication in general here. I'm talking about if you're given medication for pain by your doctor and they prescribed you this, then you have good reasons to reduce this pain the medication reduces in other ways. And of course, you should always consult with your doctor about changing any medication, right?
Right.
But if you're already given something to reduce your pain, then, well, you may as well do it in other ways too. And it's up to people what they choose and what they believe will work better for them.
Well, the mind is it's your most powerful tool, because Well, I've asked people in the past, what do you think is the most powerful thing about you? And they'll always say an attribute. But it all starts with your mind. Your mind is your most powerful tool because everything else is derived from that. Everything else that you may see as power or strength, it all comes from up here anyways.
It's true. It's true, and it's also true not just individually. It's also true evolutionary, right? Because
Yeah.
as animals, humans, we don't have any uh, very pronounced physical attributes. I mean, we can walk long distances. Uh, that's one of the things we can do. But other than that, is essentially our mind and our social nature and feeling connected and being creative and finding creative solutions to problems. Like I think if you leave humans with some ample time, they will start fidgeting with something and make something out of it,
Like,
whether it's art, it's a tool, or whatever. And that's how civilization happens, and that's how solutions happen. And yeah.
you know this better than anyone being a doctor of physics.
Basically, yes. That's what they do. They tell us, like, here is a desk, here is some plenty of time. We let you play with this problem and find solutions, and we will pay you for this. That's the deal. They let you play, and when we have time to play and we have the mindset to play, then we can come with more creative solutions. So I think like that's important. Whether people want to find a solution for chronic pain, for anxiety, for smoking, which yeah, I think is also what you do. Yeah, I think it's important to add in their lives opportunities to play. When we are children, uh, this is given to us externally, but as adults, we have to remember to give it to ourselves.
I'm all about really the imagination and using it as much as possible and being in that alpha state. I'm all about that. That's how we learn. That's the state we learn in.
Yeah, that's how we learn, and that's also like a state where we basically can shift from one framework to another and reprocess things, because that's what learning is, right? It's reprocessing things in some sense. And well, that's what we do with hypnosis. We help people go into these learning states where it allows them more easily to see the problem from different directions. That's a big part of what we do. One part is creating these learning contexts through our interaction with other people, whether it's traditional hypnosis with eyes closed or more conversational. And the
Right.
other aspect is pointing them to different ways to view of the problem and realizing the outcomes of different ways, so then they can choose to adopt the direction in which they will go. And since they choose the direction in which they will go and it's positive for them, the effects they get can be lifelong.
Absolutely. It goes back to what we said at the top: identity, perception, and agency.
Yeah. And I like it, you know. I noticed while we talk here, right? I noticed while we talk, we use a bit different terminologies for different things. Like you talk about identity, about alpha waves, and about learning. And somehow I'm a bit more descriptive and more and a bit more blubbery. But in the end, we find we are talking about the same thing from different
Perspectives.
languages.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's the wonderful thing when we realize in how many ways something can be lived, can be experienced, can be described. Because I think it that way, you think it that way, and any other person in the world thinks something in their own completely different way.
The commonality is we're all human and we all react emotionally first, and we all want to feel good. Those are the common denominators with humans. no matter where you're from, no matter what you're doing, you want to go back to what feels good.
Yeah, and that's what makes basically working with it simple. Not necessarily simple, but brings a simplicity to it. Because the instances in each person's life can be vastly different, but the principles underneath them are quite common in most of us. And then our job is to help people based on these principles realize what all this meant through their own life story and according to where they want to go.
I love that. I see it the same way. It's just a really, I couldn't ask for a better job. I love it. I love assisting people and seeing them live their lives more optimally. And I'm sure working with chronic pain, you really can see a difference in people, a really empirical difference.
Yeah, like honestly, it's one of my favorite feelings of satisfaction when in the end of a session, I see the change in people's expression and face when they suddenly realize that the pain is not there anymore.
Yeah, wonderful.
It's like noticing this shift is it's very rewarding. It's indeed very rewarding, and it's partially one of my motivations for doing what I do. It's like I want to help people, and at the same time, I'm also motivated by noticing how their shifts change when they get free of pain. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's what motivates me to do it better, do it more consistent, and always try to improve and basically guarantee the best outcomes for every person that decides to work with me.
That's the kind of hypnotherapist I want. Orestis, thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to link your free Facebook group below so people can find you and go and get the value of your expertise, because you touch on a lot of mindset in general, so it can really benefit everyone. There's something for everyone in your group, so I will link your info. And is there anything else you wanted to add to the conversation before we?
Let me think. Yeah, I want people to know basically that chronic pain affects different areas of their lives. And so what they are experiencing as a big weight, because it can affect work, it can affect um, personal relationships with our partners, social relationships. It can significantly decrease if they decide to resolve the pain that's creating it. That basically this overwhelm that we discussed uh, is coming most often from a single source of pain. There can be other reasons, but we can significantly decrease it in totality by dealing with the pain first. And of course, there are also more general mindset shifts that allows people to uh, deal with the overwhelm in different areas with their life, like communication tools with their partner, with their work, how to think, even if they don't decide to deal with pain directly. And I talk about all these different things in the group. So I just want to know people that if they are in this state that they feel there is this burden and that there is no way out, to just allow themselves to open a little door of exploration towards something different, and with curiosity just examine if this is for them and what this little feeling, this little gut feeling in their body really tells them. Because learning to shift our mindset and getting informed on it can be a great asset, whether we have chronic pain or not.
It's true, because changing one thing, you'll be shocked at how many other things in your life start to change just by addressing one thing. It can really have a ripple effect through your life.
Yeah, yeah. It's this video with the dominoes that
Yeah.
essentially each domino can tip another domino that's, I think, 1.5 size bigger. So eventually you can start with a domino that's like half a centimeter, and I don't know, like 10 dominoes later, you have a domino that's a meter long. I mean, okay, my calculations now are not accurate. But yeah, sometimes just starting with the simplest, smallest thing can be the spark for a bigger change that allows things to unfold and happen. So yeah, people should. I invite people to acknowledge the small shifts and the small changes, and cherish them and keep them, and treat them as something they can learn from,
Yeah.
so they can guide themselves better in life. Yeah.
Wow. Dr. Orestis Vasilakis, all the way from Prague, working with clients internationally. I know you're busy, but I want to thank you for spending the time with me today. It's been really, really wonderful.
Oh, thank you, Alyson. It was a pleasure, and thank you too. And yeah, I'm excited to continue our conversation
Yeah.
some other time in the future, and whenever, yeah, things.
Maybe in Prague. I want to. I want to come to Prague. They'll give me an excuse.
Well, you never know. The world is a small place.
Yeah. And for everyone who's watching, I really invite you to check out Orestis group on Facebook. I'm going to link it below. There is something in there for everyone. Believe me, it's really interesting from a really interesting man. So thank you for joining us today. And if you have questions, please DM me. Again, you can DM Orestis. I'm sure he's open to
Yes.
questions. Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes.
great, perfect. Either of us, it's fine. Our information's below. Thanks again, and we will see you soon.
Bye, everyone.